Welcome back, everybody. Super excited about today's video. If you remember where we were before, we have already added um, our get task, our post task, and our ability to edit a single task. So our last remaining routes is we just want to be able to mark when a task has been completed. So in today's video, we're going to be adding our post and delete on that route. And then in addition to that, we're also going to be adding some validation, some basic validation on just these name properties. So coming in, here's our to-do list for the day. And first up, we're going to be working on validation for our task routes. So let's open up our tests and let's get them running. So we've got all our tests passing, things are looking good. In order to test validation, the first things we want to do is to test what exactly do we want to send um, to our app or to our API that we want to come back as a failure. So first off, if we do have a validation error, we're going to want to return a 400 code, and we're also going to send the body of that response is going to be the error of the object. So we're going to make our test name this. We're going to say task should respond with a 400, and the body should contain the error message. So here, the first item that we're going to do is we're just going to actually come in and we're going to send nothing. We're going to send nothing at all, and we want this to return 400, and we actually want our body to come back with, we want it to strict equal, and we're going to say error, name is a required field. There we go. GitHub Copilot actually auto-filled that out for us. So let's come back in. We should see a failed test. We see this coming back as a 3. Our tests work in sync and unison, and so we're going to get everything failing after this, and that's fine. In addition to this, let's get a few more. So when we let's change some of these. Should respond with a 400, and we should say, we're also going to say when we're also going to add a test for when with a name that is only 2 characters long. So we're going to do test AB, perfect. And we actually want still to be 400, and we want the body name, and we want this to be strict equal. We want the body to strict equal. We want to have one property, and we want it to say name is required to be 3 characters long. I think that's good. And then we're going to have one last test here, and we're going to create a name that is 200 characters long. And in order to do this, let's quickly iterate through. So we'll say name equals, and we're going to do a 4. Perfect. We're just going to send up a name that has 200 A's in a row, and we're going to say name is required to be less than 100 characters. We're going to say 128 characters long. It's required to be equal or less than 120 characters long. And so we should be getting at least 3 of these posted in a row. So let's double check our tests. We see all three failing. So let's go ahead into our routes now. And we actually are going to want to make sure that we're applying these same validations on both of our routes. Um, we can actually still well, you know, we'll add the validation to our put and add those tests in just a second. Let's get our everything working at least initially. Let's go ahead and add a validate function or validate task, and it's going to be passed in attacks. And you know, actually coming back to our test, we don't want to return a generic error. For now, if we are expecting a the name, let's say name name is a required field, and the body. So we should post a 400 when no name is provided. So let's come back over here to our validate task. This is going to end up returning a partial of task. And so we can use any of these properties. Let's see what Copilot's actually suggesting. This doesn't look good. This const errors does look pretty good though. And this will be a partial task. And we're going to return our errors. And let's go ahead and use this. So we're going to have, this is going to respond with errors. And we are going to pass in the body. So if we have, if we actually have anything within errors, we are going to respond with a 400. We are going to return the errors themselves, and that's about it. So we've got our errors here, and what we should expect is our test should be passing now. And let's see where we're at. So we still have 6 failed tests. Let's rerun one more time to make sure we have the latest. And we do look like we have the latest. So post should respond with a 400 with no name. When we're going to say when, not with a 400 when no name is provided. And what are we actually getting? We are getting name is a required field. Oh, we are actually not doing anything in our validation yet, are we? So here's our errors. So if task.name, if no task, that actually looks good. If the task name is under 3, we want that. And else if task.name.length is greater than 100, and we are expecting it to be a certain size. It's interesting that GitHub Copilot is actually picking a lot of this up, and which is really cool. I can see how this is going to be helpful. So we are responding with our errors now, and let's see what's coming back. We have this get task. So our 3 posts are returning correctly. So get task should respond with the created items. And instead, it is actually responding with all of these extras. So when we validate our task, it seems like, oh, we're pushing this. So right away, when we get into our route, we want to immediately validate. And there's everything working and passing as intended. So I think we could attempt to pass some middleware in here. But for now, I think we're okay. So now let's go ahead and add these same types of tests for our we're going to do a little copy pasting, and we're going to do the same thing for our puts. And we actually want all of our puts to respond with a 400. So we're going to go ahead and take, instead of copying this, we're going to take this route that we know for sure should respond. We want it to respond with 400. Now we are going to make it so not every property is required to be updated. So we're not going to require them to send a name. It kind of doesn't make much sense to send no name, but that's fine. Or maybe we should be required to update them. Let's make the requirement that you do need to send the entire object. And so we'll say we should respond with 400 when no name is provided. So we're going to say there's no name here, and we should get back a 400. And what we should see is the same name is a required field. So we should be toStrictEqual. So we should see this, and we should see this is failing. We'll do this same, I think as long as we have this one test, we know that our validation is actually being used, and maybe we'll do our under 3, and then we can be confident that it's going to be for both. So let's go ahead and we'll just do the same AB, and we'll come here. Name is required. Let's copy that. Should respond when name only 2 characters long. So we're going to do name AB, and then we should expect at least 3 characters. It should complain. So we're going to take that same validation logic, and we're going to just put this right in our put as well. So here's our validate task. It's after the UID. I think that's fine. Actually, when you try to get the task, we should actually just validate the entire task immediately. Not even check if it's, or does that make sense? Should we check that the resource actually exists before we try to validate that resource? I would say yes, actually. So if we have no resource, we'll send back a 404. And if we do have a resource, we will validate the actual task, because this could be, I think we'll just go with that for now. I don't feel strongly either way on this. So we're just getting name as a required field, and then we're expecting a full, the full error. toStrictEqual expected this, and we're receiving the other, responding with a 400. Let's see what our test is saying for us. toStrictEqual name is a required field, and we are receiving, it's because we have our name right here in the body. And okay. All right, so we've added some validation to these new routes, so that's good. Let's look back at the API routes. We also wanted to be able to actually say if we have completed a task or not. So we've added a completed entry. Interesting thing on this is we want to restrict people from being able to have multiple completed dates on the same exact day. So that should be unique. And then I think that's the main requirement here. We want to make sure that the task ID actually exists. We are going to need one more entry here. And what that is even though we've created and deleted, we actually also need to be able to see all of the completed entries that we have on a given date. So let's go ahead and add that in. So looking back at our routes, I actually noticed we were missing a pretty important route, and that was actually being able to track and get all of our tasks that we've completed. So we're going to be able, we want to be able to mark when we've done a task. We want to be able to toggle that on and off with a post and a delete. But we also need to be able to say, for a given task, what are all the days that I've actually completed it? And so we're going to be adding these 3 routes now, and let's jump right into that. I've gone ahead and stubbed out a lot of these, are what we're doing at a high level. So first, we're going to get all of our completed tasks for our first task. Now remember, we've already deleted one of these tasks. We've only got one task that is in our database, our fake database, and that's with a UID of 2. So let's go ahead and get this. Now remember, all these tests are actually going to be failing, and we're going to work on them. We'll fix the one, and then we'll move to the next one. So this is going to be task 2 completed. So we're going to do a get to that. We're expecting it to be a 404 because the task, it doesn't exist at all. So we're not even caring about what our strict equal is. We're expecting it to be a 400. What is this complaining? Test title is used multiple times, and so we're gonna actually let's delete this. This is being used more than just this. Oh yes, of course. We want to do task. So get task ID should respond with 404 when requesting a non-existent task UID. In fact, once we've described this, kind of surprised our ESLN is not automatically getting that to smush things in. We'll just do this. So get test should respond with a 404 when non-existent. So this is our 404 request, and so it is responding with a 404. It should be breaking. The reason it's not breaking is because that route actually does not exist yet, and we're going to find that out really quickly when we turn this to a 2. We should actually be getting we should be getting an empty array when requesting an existent. So this should be a 200, and this should be to strict equal a empty array. And so we'll see this second test fail. And when we fix this second test, we'll see our first test actually failed, so we get it right. So let's dive in here. Let's just go ahead. We're going to copy this guy out, and let's set up an interface as well. We're going to do interface task completion. This is going to take, let's go ahead and look at our future DB schema. So this is going to have the task UID and then a completed at date. So relatively simple. So we'll have a UID. You have a UID. We'll have a task UID. And we're also going to have a date. So completed at date. And within our task completion, we'll do the same type of thing here. So let task completions. We're just gonna do, we'll do an array of these for now. Some of these are gonna kind of get interesting. We might have to use some sets and stuff, but I think that'll work for our case. We're gonna move down here. We're gonna use a get. We're going to be on completed. We'll finish this up, and let's just go ahead and use our GitHub auto correct and see what this is actually doing. So very interesting at first here. So we are getting our UID. We're going to get our task, correct? If we have no task, we're gonna send a 404 right away. And so this is interesting. So we are responding with an empty array. Well, is that true? We want to find our completions should be equal to all of our task completions, where the task UID is equal to, this is interesting. Okay, we've renamed task UID to UID. I don't think we need to do that for this one. We'll just keep these the same. And so this is interesting. This is responding. This is sending back a 404 even from task completed. So is that actually what we expect? What we are not doing currently, so this is with task completed or task ID like that. And let's look at what our tests are actually trying to set. So we have task 1 completed, task 1 completed. That does look okay. And let's just do a double check here. And let's just say task UID. And let's just make sure that this is even being called. So task UID. Oh, it's very possible we're actually matching. I think we might be actually matching this route before this route. And so we're calling that route first. We're calling our get on, oh, we don't actually even have a get on this. Well, that's interesting as well. I'll move this up just in case I'm not understanding, but we actually are seeing the same type of route. So we're gonna go ahead and console log this back out. We're getting a 404 when we don't have a task for the UID. So let's go ahead and log out the task and see if we're not understanding something here too. So we have undefined, undefined. Let's see what's in our actual tasks. We have in our tasks themselves, we have our UID of 2 and test 2. So this is actually what we would expect here. So we're getting this tasks find, this task UID is actually not showing up. My guess is that we have a string here. Let's actually do a quick test. We'll do a console log type of task UID as well as our parameter. Well, we know for sure our task UID here is that. What is our task UID itself that is coming from our properties? That's an interesting one. So we are a string and we are testing for equality there. So let's do another and let's do, all right, GitHub Copilot, already knowing what we want to do. We're going to log everything out. We're going to continue to log everything out here. And let's stop logging the rest of this. So we should see four logs. We have 2, 1, 2, 1. So every task, there's only one task in our tasks object. Oh, would you look at that? So our task itself, we're still passing in the 2. We're still passing in the 1. So that was actually working as intended. And let's see if our tests are coming back correctly. We received we're expecting the status. We expect our body to be an empty array. All right, so our tests are now passing. And let's go ahead and remove our logs. And so that actually looks good. So let's move on to our next test. So test 2 is completed. So now we're going to be creating a completed task for task 2. We should be returning a 201 and the completed task. So let's go ahead and grab one of our other post objects where we are creating here we have a 201 test. So let's go ahead and we'll use this as a little template, and we're going to create a post. We'll have the route. I kind of like this little get and then the get. So let's actually take the style of the way we're writing this, and I think that works pretty good actually. Task post completed should respond to 201, and the completed task and we're just going to leave that like that. So we're always going to be working on this completed task here. And for now, we are going to be doing a completed at, and we are going to just be doing today's date. So we have that here, we're sending this over, and what we expect to be back, what we should be expecting to come back should be a date that is equal to, so what we'll do is we're going to say date equals this, today. We'll send over today. We are expecting a 201. We would expect the UID to come back. We expect the task UID to equal 2, and we want our completed at to equal the date that we're actually being provided. We'll see if this actually evaluates correctly still. So we're expecting it to come back as a 201, and we're receiving a 404. So, and that is because we have not yet created the route. That makes sense. So let's go back into our route here, and we're going to do a router.post. We have our task UID. We have the task itself. If there is no task, we are going to send this back. We should probably be doing some validation. I think this is actually fine for here. For completions, we are going to be using this eventually, but for now, we won't worry about it. So we're going to say we have a 201. We're going to simply push our, we do want to, so yes, we're going to put our task completions, and we're going to very simply push over our new, what we actually do need to find is the next completion UID. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with 1, and we're going to do while let's see what this is actually saying. So while we can find a UID with that, then we're going to increment that up. I think that's next. Maybe the easiest thing though is, because this is, we're just reinventing the wheel. So we'll do next task UID is that, and actually we could just reference the end of the array. We know our array, well actually that would have old UIDs. Well, that'll be fine. So we'll just say that our next UID is just the length of the array, because we can be guaranteed, oh no, we won't be guaranteed, because if we delete, we actually will need to, we're gonna track, so we're gonna actually track the next completion UID is equal to 1, and then we'll increment it every single time that we end up using it. So let's go ahead and assign this. We're going to do task completions. We're going to push, very simply push the UID is equal to the next completion. I guess we are keeping that as a string. The task UID is fine like this, and the completed at is actually also, this can come from our parameters. we should be checking that this is required as well. I think we can actually make a little test. We'll add in a to do validate completed at is being sent. So we'll add that in after. So we'll take our completed at and we're just going to simply return the completed, and we will return the one that was just created. There we go. And we should see our test work. Completed at seems to not exist on task UID. How does it, I wonder how it's referencing this. Does not exist on task UID. Interesting. I wonder how it understands that this request that's very interesting how it's even knowing that this type is coming from something else. So we might be able to, let's go ahead and ask ChatGPT this. How to specify the request.body type in Express using TypeScript. How to specify. Let's see. So we have our body type. So we can actually cast it to our type. We have the Express validator. I really don't like to cast things like this. I mean, I suppose we could cast. This is normally just an absolute no-no. Typically, however, maybe Request or Express doesn't necessarily support this very easily, and so I suppose we can do a task completion. This is so ugly though. I guess we can do this as long as we validate on everything and we have our to do, so we can get around it for now, but this is typically a big no-no from my experience. So let's see what we're coming back with now. We expected, this is our date that's coming back, and we are expecting a completed at to equal today, and instead we are receiving undefined, which doesn't make much sense. Our completed at is coming from this. Let's see what's actually being sent over task UID. No, let's actually see what is coming over here. Completed at. So in that task, we are sending an undefined. So let's see what we're actually sending here. I see the completed at being sent. We are posting on the completed. What we are not, oh, it's because I see. So we are actually getting this from the parameters, but what we should be doing is getting this from the body. So this is from our, and that's how it's inferring this. So let's go ahead and just kind of come back here, and this is our completed at is coming from, this is actually coming from the body. And so we are going to be pushing this. We are going to be sending that, and we should be getting our time is coming back as a string instead. And I think that is fine. We can cast this to a string. I guess it wouldn't make much sense to string. Let's see what we get here. So what we'll do is we can actually also cast our, no, we don't want to cast our, we don't want to cast both of these to a string. We receive this. So what we can do is we will new date from the response, and that should equal today. And it does. Okay. So this test is passing. Let's actually do this validation here. And we won't send our completed at all. So we should respond with a 400 when no completed is provided. So we're providing nothing. We should just simply receive a 400 here. We should see our test failing. And let's come over here. If no completed at, respond 400, completed as required field. I think that sounds good. And we'll actually also check that this is coming back in our test itself. So let's come to our test, expect response.body to equal okay, and we're not using our today at all here. So we should see our passing here. So we've now validated this. So when we create a we've done our third task here. So we've got our get, we've got our post, we've got our post when no good. So when we've created a completed task, should return a 201, and that is true. So we are responding in a 201. Now we want to do some checking. So we're actually going to do this same exact, and we're going to call this isn't really today. It is, but it's now. And the reason for that is we're actually going to be making another call, the same exact call. And what we want is this to actually return a 400. Should respond with 400 when completed at is on a day that already is completed. So that's true. So we have now, and we want 400, and we want our body, and we'll just come up here. We want our body to say exactly that. We don't want UID, and we should say completed at the date is already completed. So that's what we're going to respond. So how do we actually get this logic? So that we should be failing here. And so in our test, in our logic, and let's close some of these out. So in our logic, how do we know if that date is actually is in use already? Let's get a get date string. This looks good. So that actually looks good. So what we want to do is we just want to have a unique date that is going to always return. So if I say now, and then I get now 10 minutes from now, well, I'm still have the same exact date. It's still January 11th, 2024. And I just want to compare that with 10 minutes ago. Well, it's the same exact date. So we'll use this and check if there's an actual existing date within. So we have our tasks. So we're checking task, and we're going to say if we're going to try to find if an existing date is here. So we're going to close this guy up. So this is actually what this is going to be, but we actually need to get, so we're going to get, if the task completion dot task UID is equal to our task UID, and the task get string is the same as the one that we're using, then we're going to return this. So GitHub Copilot actually did a great job at figuring a lot of that out ourselves. So let's return this. In fact, we can take advantage of a little bit of this shorthand here, like this. So we actually get a 500 here. So that's interesting. What is this 500? Received a 500. Okay. So let's just go ahead and let's just try on this. And this is where our error was introduced. So let's just go. We should probably have better error handling, but we don't currently. So let's see what error is coming through. Our error is date full year. Is that true? Get full year is not a function. It seems like it should be, but apparently, perhaps because we're not actually getting the, so what we can do is completed at string, and then what we'll do is we'll cast this. So let's cast that and see if, are we still getting the same exact problem? So we're getting a 201 and we're still, but I don't see us, oh, it's because we have this try. Are we getting a 500 still? No, we are not getting a 500. Interesting, okay. So we are expecting to get a 400, instead we received a 200. And oh, okay, so we're failing at a different point. So should respond with a 400 when no completed at is provided. Oh, and when there's no completed at, we need to actually move this down here. And the reason for that is we just need to check the string. Okay, so now we're actually making sure that we are returning a unique value. So we have already checked this. Now we want to check that our date is not in the future. So instead of now, we want to do get tomorrow's date. So we're going to do const tomorrow equals new date tomorrow, set date tomorrow. And now we're going to use tomorrow. And what we want to make sure, so that's the beauty of Copilot, that it would actually already do this. And the date is in the future. That's what we want this to be. And let's come in and actually add this validation as well. So we have our completed at. If completed at, no, we know that it's a valid date. I suppose we don't though. So maybe this is actually another great test. So we'll actually add this test as well. Should respond with 400 is when completed at is an invalid date. So we're just gonna send something like ooga booga. We're gonna remove this. and our response should be completed at needs to be a valid date. So we should see this fail. Okay. So we're actually, ChatGPT is actually helping us create some tests itself, which is awesome. Um, so let's go ahead, and our date is going to be in the future. Let's go ahead and check that. Check that date is not in future. Is not in the future. Yes. So we're going to follow if completed at is greater than now. That makes sense. And we'll see. Okay, our test is actually passing here as well. So now we're going to be doing another task. And this is going to be for yesterday. And this should be a 201. In fact, let's copy a actual valid test that did work. And instead of now, we'll put yesterday. So we're going to say yesterday. Okay. And we have yesterday's task, and now we should be getting completed tasks for task 2. We should be returning a 200 with a completed size of 2. So we'll come up to our old task that had 0 and had nothing created, and we should be actually, we should do body.length should actually be 2 now, and that's actually passing. Now we want to add in delete. So we're going to delete today's task. And what we do want to do is we actually want to make sure that we are, let's delete today's task. So in order to do that, we're going to do a test. First, we're going to do a delete. And this is going to be on a completed UID. Should respond with a 201. And that's simply what we're doing here. But first, what we're going to do is let's go ahead and get, we want to write a helper function. It's going to be the same as this get date string. Let's just go ahead and export this guy. This really could go into utility. We're not going to be worried about this yet though. So let's import from this is actually coming straight from the index. And we are first going to get all of our tasks. Response, and then our tasks can actually just use the body. And that way we don't have to write tests that are hitting the database directly. What we want to do is use our existing API calls, and then we're going to interact with the API only through our only through other API calls. That's going to make sure our tests aren't very brittle. We can refactor things. We know our endpoints are still working. So here's our tasks. And what we're going to do is we're going to delete one of these. So let's go ahead here, and we're going to just very simply delete. We are going to pick, okay, we're going to delete, should respond with a 2 on when deleting today's task. So let's find const task today's task, is equal to that. Okay, and it's equal to t, and then we are going to get date string, and that's going to be t completed. Oh, it's not going to be task, it's going to be completed tasks. And then we're going to have a completed at is equal to new date. Yes, so that's today's task. And what we're going to do is this is going to go here. We're going to get the UID from that task as well. And then from here, or we're not going to do, we're going to do deleted response. And this is where we're going to actually check that it's a 201. So we're going to say our deleted response, we expect this to end up being a 201. So T has an any. This is actually going to be a completed task. And let's go ahead and we'll export these interfaces out so we can reference them. So we'll come up here, task completion. So our response body as task completion. Today's task is possibly undefined. What we're going to do is we're going to simply do an optional here, and we should see a 404. What are we getting though? This is date full year is not a function. It really does not like date full year. So that's interesting because it is working in our, oh, it's because we're not casting that. We need to actually cast this guy because we were just using a string. So we're getting a 201, we want to receive a 404. So we're going to get our post, copy this guy down to be a 201, or to be a delete. We're going to do a lot of that same validation on this route. We are going to be doing another completed UID. So we have a task UID, we have a completed UID. We have nothing in our body, and so none of these are actually required at all. And in fact, none of these are required. We could say that we're going to delete a task. So I think this is still valid, but I think we can actually do a very similar thing here and check if this even exists. So task completions, find where the task completion UID is equal to the completed UID. And if there is none, we're also going to send back a 404. So let's also reference how we deleted in past. So we just did a very simple filter. And so we'll just do the same thing. Tasks completions equal task completions dot filter. Let's remove some of this where our UID is not equal to that UID. We don't need anything related to our strings. This is probably being a constant, that's why that's complaining. And this is actually kind of surprising that this is staying here. And the reason why is we never actually incremented this. We probably should have had a test to fix that. I don't think we need to now because our database should be doing that internally in the future. So we should be getting a 201, and there we do. We see our test passing. And on our last task, we should see that this is actually being deleted here. should be getting a size of 1. Should respond with, and we're not getting empty, and a task completion size of 1. This one should be a task completion size of 2. Okay. So, and we've changed it to 1. So, all right. So we've got quite a few tasks now. But the cool thing is everything for our tests, our routes, our task routes, we are now rocking and rolling. We have all of our API routes created. We have them all tested. And so this is actually going to be great for us moving forward. We'll be able to play around with some of the pipelines to get those tests running. We'll have some more confidence in our API that it's actually working. Moving on from here, we're actually going to be moving all of our API into a Docker container. And then very shortly after that, we're going to actually get Postgres installed, and we're going to get our API actually communicating with Postgres. We'll get things moved into an actual database instead of just hard coding things, and this should be a lot more realistic. So looking forward to next video, and I'll see you then.